Bring in show music, please.
Hi, I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Today on Squawk Pod, what unfolded between ChatGPT and a 16-year-old boy and how it led to tragedy. That teenager's parents are suing OpenAI, and their lawyer, Jay Edelson, explains why.
Sam Altman and OpenAI knew that there were going to be problems. They rushed us to market because they wanted to be Google Gemini. So they did a week of training instead of months of training.
How technology impacts our mental health and how we can help or hinder our paths to wellness with happiness scholar Arthur Brooks.
Politics never raises happiness. Anytime a politician says, I'm going to make you happy, you should be very, very nervous.
Plus, Cracker Barrel has heard the social media uproar about its rebrand, and our own Steve Liesman is following the White House Federal Reserve drama and who the president might put in a few jobs next.
How do they prioritize their loyalty to the president versus their loyalty to the congressional mandate of low inflation and low unemployment?
It's Wednesday, August 27th, 2025. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Andrew by in 3, 2, 1. Up and Andrew. Cue.
Good morning and welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live at the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Andrew Sorkin along with Leslie Picker and Wilfred Frost in for Becky and Joe on what has been a wildly newsy last week of August.
Quiet August week.
Pretty incredible.
All sorts of international markets this week, bonds and equities, have moved around a lot on various stories that are not insignificant, like there potentially being there will be a vote of no confidence in the French government, so that, tariffs in India, etc., which we're going to talk about. But it does show the resilience of the US market in light of a potentially massive threat. And you kind of wonder what that will lead the administration to do, but also credit to them that it hasn't derailed it as we might have all expected, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, I think the market too, when you kind of get into these unprecedented territories, these historic ramifications, they don't know what to make of it because there is no playbook for how it's happened in the past. And when something looks likely to go to the courts, even potentially the Supreme Court, I mean, it's impossible to really know how to trade that.
Mm-hmm. I also think people are saying the key person remains the Fed chair. And it's a long way until, and I know Steve's going to come up and join us until you can really change the balance effectively. But the flip side, I then think to that is, it is now more clear than ever that in 9 months' time, the Fed chair will be different and will be someone who is going to do what the president wants. So again, I don't see why markets can't look ahead to that.
I think they already are. So I think...
but in light of that, then how come the 10-year is only at 4 point whatever we're at?
Because I think, and Steve, I'm very curious what Steve will say. We had a whole conversation about this maybe a month or two ago. The idea that there is already a shadow Fed chair in place, in the role, we just don't know the person's name. Meaning that the market has already just assumed that there is a dovish, relatively loyal follower of the president that's in that job. We may not know exactly who that human being happens to be, and that the market is already, and that any sort of shifts have already taken place. This was sort of months out.
Sure. I mean, but my point is, it's all stable until it suddenly isn't, obviously, but the US 10-year is at 4.27, well off its highs. You've got the UK 10-year at 4.72, other way around. The dollar fell 10% first half of the year, but then it's kind of stabilized. It is remarkably stable at the moment, and I think what you're seeing is, even despite the one big beautiful bill and the deficit going up to 6 or 7% in the short term, even despite all of this, there is this reserve currency of the world status of the US that's holding up for now.
And by the way, that is the argument of the president.
Right.
That is the argument of the president to say, look, you may think the world is screwed up, and you may think we're screwed up even, but we are like the best thing going. And if you want to do business with us, you're going to do a business with us on our terms. That's the way this whole thing is going to go.
I know.
The end.
That's his whole point of leverage. But to that point, the 30-year yield is up 20% over the last year. I mean, it has been ticking higher. So regardless of whether, the ultimate outcome of all of this leads to a 25 basis point cut in September, maybe some more cuts after that, a more easing cycle, the market rates themselves have been pretty steady, if not ticking higher. So kind of getting, what President Trump says is getting mortgage rates lower, getting credit card payments lower. All of that is dictated by the market rates, which have kind of gone in the opposite direction of
Well, and that's the other piece of this, which is even if, right, no matter what he does on the low end of the, on the 2 year, who knows what the future is going to hold.
Unless what Scott Bessent has argued works, which is, again, a very tough, we'll see this over the coming months, which is to issue way more short-dated bills than longer-dated debt, which is, a kicking the can down the road solution. It's not a long-term solution, but again, only a greater argument to want to keep shorter-end rates lower because, it'll help on those costs. My view on this is slightly influenced by the problem we're having back home, which is the Chancellor can't even sneeze, and we go up another 10 basis points every day. The 30-year was at a 30-year high at the close yesterday. So it is just a remarkable snapshot on the difference.
Right.
Where, can you imagine if the UK decided to say, do you know what, we're going to fire this member of the Monetary Policy Committee and we want to do this? I mean, I think the pound and the bonds would collapse overnight. And it's just a fascinating snapshot in the difference of market reaction here this week. Oh, I thought we were about to talk about...
We've passed
India.
We've passed time. We'll talk about
Fed.
India and the tariffs in just a moment, but I think we're going to continue with the Fed piece.
Yeah, the Fed.
No one told me to rap, my bad.
Saying it will abide. I'll tell you to rap, Wilf. No, I'm just kidding. Says it will abide by any court decision on whether President Trump has the legal authority to fire Fed Governor Lisa Cook. A White House spokesman said Trump had determined there was cause to remove Cook over alleged but unproven mortgage fraud. Cook's lawyer says the president has no authority to remove her. For his part, Trump told reporters he would abide by any court decision. The president has been criticizing the Fed, which is designed to be insulated from party politics, for not lowering interest rates. Here's what he said at a cabinet meeting yesterday.
We just put a very good man in one position. We might switch him to the other. It's a longer term and pick somebody else, but we're very happy with the person we have in there. And we'll have a majority very shortly, so that'll be great. Once we have a majority, housing is going to swing.
A Wall Street Journal report says Trump wants to move quickly to announce a replacement for Lisa Cook. The president said he could fill her seat with economic advisor Stephen Myron. The Journal says former World Bank President David Malpass could be tapped for another opening. So we were just talking about a shadow Fed chair, shadow Fed two seats potentially.
I thought just one last piece on this. I know we got to talk India, but there was a line, and at some point we should pull the video, maybe when Steve gets on the broadcast, because it reflects exactly what he was saying, and we had that graphic wall yesterday. The president said, we're about to shift the balance. I think he said, we're about to have a majority.
Yes.
And that is so much like the Supreme Court.
Yes.
I'm about to have a majority.
Or Congress, or, I mean...
But I also think...
talk about these things.
Does it go a full shift? It depends what the people who are being appointed think about why they're being appointed. And again, I would think Supreme Court justices don't publicly ever say, I'm of this particular view or that particular view because they think they're legal experts, but they must acknowledge that they're only getting selected under a certain president, not the other one. And I would think these economic experts are one step further removed from that. So you can try and politicize it, and you can appoint certain types of people, but they have a longer term. They probably don't.
Not longer term than the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is for life.
Well, that's true.
You have a
that's
true.
True. But you have an 8 year.
Ostensibly be as independent as you humanly want once you get into that role. That was the whole reason we gave them a lifetime appointment.
But do you think the types of people? Look at the types of people he's already appointed, including in his first term. Are they as malleable, perhaps, as you think a very purist legal interpretation on the Supreme Court is towards how it then influences decision? I don't know. I'm just raising it as a question.
I think they have a particular bent, political bent that has to do with.
But they have a political bent to spike inflation. I think there's a political bent for the current president to want to influence someone in the very short term ahead of, say, the midterms next year. But once you pass that and you go forward. I mean, look, it's a genuine question. Do you really think they'll think, let's hike rates because we're coming into a general election and now there's a Democrat president? I don't know if that happens.
We will see. We have a lot. We're going to be able to talk about this a lot more throughout the broadcast.
Now, an additional 25% U.S. tariff on India is taking effect this morning, stemming from American anger over India's purchases of Russian oil. The U.S. is India's single largest export partner. U.S. tariffs will now be 50% on Indian products, including garments, jewelry, furniture, and chemicals, A 50% tariff is on par with some of the highest US rates for countries around the world, and it could weigh on American companies who've tried to diversify out of China and into India, and could also push India towards stronger trading relationships with other countries. The stock market, though, is closed today. It was down yesterday, and investors will be watching for any market reaction tomorrow when it reopens. And of course, these tariffs very much linked to trying to pressure Russia to the table, given that they've been one of the big buyers of Russian oil since the war broke out. Now, separately, the European Union is working on a plan to fast-track legislation that would remove all tariffs on US industrial goods. That's according to a Bloomberg report. President Trump has demanded that the EU remove those industrial tariffs before the US lowers its tariffs on European auto exports. So another one to watch there.
Cracker Barrel pulling a 180. The company says it will revert to its old branding after online anger erupted over a slimmed down logo. Cracker Barrel revealed its new logo a little more than a week ago. It removed the depiction of an old man and a barrel and dropped the phrase "Old Country Store." Shares of the company's stock fell 7% last Thursday as social media commenters described the new logo as generic. Some conservatives also said it took away from the classic American feel of the brand. You can see the stock is up in pre-market about 6.2% on the latest news. It's now essentially flat since the controversy began last week, a literal 180. I spent a lot of childhood meals at Cracker Barrel, so it is nostalgic. I get it, but it's an interesting push and pull with trying to modernize
getting a
old
lot of
brands in
business.
this
It's going to
environment.
get a lot of branding.
It's not as controversial
about
a U-turn as there has been of late.
What, you mean like American Eagle?
Yeah, it was almost like they went too boring and safe as opposed to being directly political.
Right. Well, that's kind of the environment we're in. I think that's what's so interesting about the story is that companies do one thing thinking it's good for marketing, good for branding, but people have a different take. Let's get the latest on President Trump's efforts to remove Lisa Cook from the Federal Reserve Board. CNBC senior economics reporter Steve Liesman talked about it all day with us. Going to probably talk about it all day today, maybe the rest of the week as well.
We have some news, Leslie. Sources telling CNBC that Fed Governor Lisa Cook could file her lawsuit to overturn her firing by the president as soon as today in D.C. federal court. But the president saying yesterday he's already counting on having a majority on the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. The outcome of Cook's challenge could matter a lot for Fed independence, determining how much leverage the president has over new and even existing board members. The loss of Fed independence could mean any president could order Fed officials to lower interest rates for short-term political gain, risking higher inflation over the medium to longer term. The president could demand that the Fed buy assets, including bonds, crypto, or even stocks, using its rather considerable balance sheet. And it also raises concern about the dollar's reserve status and the U.S. bond market. Meanwhile, Bloomberg reporting that the White House is considering using that majority on the board to exert more influence over the 12 Federal Reserve bank districts, 5 of whom have a vote on a rotating annual basis. CNBC from Jackson Hole reported on this concern among Fed presidents. Multiple economists and current and former Fed officials, they've argued that it is in the president's interest to support the Fed's independence. Some have suggested the Fed's tough stance on potential tariff inflation has actually helped the president and kept a lid on price increases from spreading from tariffs to other parts of the economy, which is to say the president can find out the value of Fed independence the easy way or the hard way.
Steve, going back to those bullet points you put up of what losing independence could lead to. I mean, just replacing Lisa Cook, even replacing Chair Powell in 9 months' time as well, that doesn't lead to that scale of loss of independence.
It does not, and that's a great point, which is why I said the outcome of the legal challenge. What is cause? What kind of ability does the president have?
But even if Lisa Cook walked out of the door yesterday, and even if Chair Powell decided, I'm done with this, I'm walking out the door,
right,
you're still a long way from that. Because
Absolutely.
you've got a lot of steps to get through before you can directly influence them to make decisions.
Well, there's 2 pieces to this, I think. Well, one is the people that you put in charge. Right? Who do you put there? How do they prioritize their loyalty to the president versus their loyalty to the congressional mandate of low inflation and low unemployment?
Okay, let's play this out. Let's say this goes to the Supreme Court.
Let's say it's going, right?
Okay.
I mean, that's where it has to go.
So, given what you know about this Supreme Court and what I know you've been talking to all sorts of legal scholars and experts around the world on this, do we think that this Supreme Court would challenge this idea or would abide by it?
What I think we've seen a couple of things. First of all, the timing of these things. This lawsuit, if it's filed today, a judge could decide this very quickly, promptly. And then the question is, does he or her stay that ruling in awaiting appeal, right? So let's say he rules in Cook's favor, he could stay it. And then there's a similar situation where another person who won the injunction, but now it's on appeal. The Supreme Court, not a lawyer, not even a legal analyst, has given the president a lot of deference on what is executive power. And there's a really interesting piece that I read that says, not because Lisa Cook exercises monetary policy authority, but because as a federal bank regulator, she exercises executive authority, it would give the president more leeway, which is why this paper I read argues that the Congress should go back and rewrite these statutes to make very
that may be,
clear.
but when's the last time you think Congress would rewrite any statute?
Yeah. I'm just saying this was a paper that said...
If anything, they'd rewrite the statute the opposite way.
So this is an administration that has said, if in any particular place an official exercises executive authority, the president has the ability to fire this person at will. Not even with the cause stipulation.
Because of her role as a banking regulator.
Because...
Which, by the way, Fed independence and banking regulation is not something that people talk about. I mean, most would say that
somebody
they don't
who knows a
have
lot about banking regulation.
Independence or don't need independence when it comes to banking regulation. They're able to, deliver on whatever promise of deregulation in the current environment that the president would like.
This is a place where the Fed does sort of hew to the political changes that are going on. You have a Biden administration, the Fed was maybe a little bit tougher on the banks, the Trump administration, and it's a reason why, Leslie, some have said, and why in England, by the way, they separated the banking regulatory and the monetary policy authority.
Okay.
I just have one quick fact for Wilf.
Worked brilliantly, but anyway.
Wilf, check it out. In 331 years of the existence of the Bank of England, no king, queen, or prime minister has ever fired the governor of the Bank of England.
Really?
He's had a couple resign because of issues and things like that.
But it's only been independent since 1997.
Right, that's true. But in the 300, they have not fired it.
Can I ask one final question?
I want to explore that in more detail.
Are you surprised at all that we have not heard from Lisa Cook as it relates to the actual underlying charges or allegations that have been alleged against her?
I am somewhat surprised by that, but again, from a legal standpoint, what I'm told is that you do not respond to facts that have not been charged, right? You wait until there is no lawsuit, right? There is just an investigation. There was a referral from FHFA to the Justice Department, right? Justice said we are investigating, right? So in general, a defendant or a potential defendant is quiet until... Now, you're right, there's a whole PR thing going on and a whole issue.
Well, not just a PR thing. She's gotten fired over the allegations unto themselves. So if there was a simple, reasonable explanation, and you could have come out and said, hey, look, my mortgage broker signed this document and I didn't see it. Or I bought the home and it was for a handicapped relative, or it comes under these exemptions, or whatever if there was an explanation, I would think, given also the role that she sits in, this goes back to the responsibility she has as a Fed governor, which is not just being some kind of any old person on the street. It's a different job. There's a moral obligation even beyond a legal obligation.
With you, Andrew. I agree, and I think it's going to be interesting today if part of the lawsuit, or if it comes out today, argues the factual basis of the allegations, or it simply says this is a targeted takeover of the Federal Reserve and talks about selective prosecution and these sorts of things. Very few of these cases are ever brought. We've asked the FHFA, how many of these referrals have you actually made public? And they have not responded.
I'm sure we'll come back to this because I actually have a couple more items on my list for you.
Cheese will be next.
Still to come on Squawk Pod, the AT&T memo that went viral, why CEO John Stankey is holding firm on his full office return mandate, and which policies yield the most productive workforce.
Some people love a tough love memo, other people...
Author and podcaster Arthur Brooks weighs in.
One of the best things that you can do is to create a climate of friendship inside, and that means not being buddies with the boss. That means getting out of the way so they can be friends with each other. You're not friends with people on Zoom. You're just not.
Welcome back to Squawk Pod. On August 1st, AT&T CEO John Stankey wrote a memo to his employees, a tough one, responding to an employment engagement survey. Stankey heard frustrations about the company's 5-day full return to office mandate, and he addressed them in a multi-page direct letter that has gone viral. The TLDR, get on board or get out. The company culture, he wrote, is shifting away from loyalty, tenure, and conformance toward a more, quote, market-based culture. He even quoted a military general in a stark image of leaving resistant employees behind. AT&T CEO John Stankey spoke to our team about it on Squawk Box earlier this week.
The fact that people spent as much time on it for as many days as they did was probably a little bit of a surprise to me. I don't know why that is. I'm not an industrial psychologist nor a psychologist, so maybe I struck a chord in some regards. But most importantly for me, I think the memo was very well understood within the business. There's been the right kind of dialogue around it. I can't say everybody's happy about it, but I think the vast majority of AT&T employees understand the direction we're headed, and that's a really good thing.
Now let's get back to Andrew, Wilfred, and Leslie. Andrew will take it from here.
Our next guest is going to weigh in on return to work, plus the U.S. government stake in Intel and so many other things. Happiness has a new book out. We got to talk about it. Harvard University professor Arthur Brooks, columnist for The Atlantic. We got a whole laundry list. AEI President Emeritus, new host of the podcast Office Hours with Arthur Brooks. And as I mentioned earlier, the new book, The Happiness Files. Insights on work and life. It is now a New York Times bestseller, so congratulations.
Thank you very much.
To you. Pretty cool.
Yeah, that's great.
All of those things are pretty cool. I don't even
Happiness
know what
is-
you do about your office. Which one do you go to, given all of the things you're doing?
It's great. It's actually, people want to be happier. Who knew? It's big news.
How important is it for employees to be happy? And I asked that in the context of John Stankey writing a pretty tough love memo to his staff. Some people love a tough love memo. Other people, freak out.
He's a very straightforward guy. I know John Stankey. He's a great CEO. It's a terrific company. And it's when somebody's straightforward in a period of double talk. CEOs have gotten really good at not saying what they actually think or trying to shade the truth when they're talking to their own employees. And a lot of CEOs have become afraid of their employees, as a matter of fact. They get blown up in the Slack channel. They don't know what to do. Something might get leaked. John Stankey doesn't care. He's running a great company, and he wants to be honest with everybody.
Can you just explain this? I just want to go. I don't want to relitigate the past, but a little bit.
Yeah.
Why do you think it was, I would say 2018, 19, into the pandemic, which is its own world.
Yeah.
Why CEOs felt that they were being held hostage by the employees, and today they don't? And the reason I ask is I think there was a view that maybe the job market was so tight. You remember people would say, job market's so tight that we can't afford to let these people leave, and so we need to make their life as cushy as humanly possible.
Right.
Today, by the way, job market seems just as tight, and people are saying, talk to the hand.
Yeah, it really has to do with the culture of activism. So activism tends to rise. Every 50 years or so, you get a real activist culture. It was the early 1970s, 2020, thereabouts. And what we saw on college campuses, this is where I make my living, is on college campuses. Activism became more important than inquiry, which is what ruined the university climate. There's nothing wrong with activism per se, but when it gets to great inside organizations, then a small group of people, usually 3 to 5% of people, can bully the leadership. Effectively, that's what happened at universities, where 3 to 5% that did not represent the community and were just blowing people up, that people became afraid of them. And that activist culture was really well organized inside companies, universities, the media, every place else you want to look. And now people are figuring out how to fight back.
But work from home captured more than 3 to 5%.
No, for sure. But the whole point is that the activists about that had disproportionate power, is the way that works, or on any particular topic. You can in the Slack channel inside a company, 3 to 5% figured out how to look like 50%. And then sooner or later, leadership caught on. And this is the case. This is what we're seeing in companies and universities, and now the backlash against the activism is what we're seeing. And I think it's welcome. I'm really happy to see it.
Are employees long-term more happy when they work in an office because they have the camaraderie, their career develops more? Short-term unhappy to be in the office, long-term happy, or is it?
There's a lot of research on that, and it's actually quite conflicted as the way that works. But the bottom line is that people are happier when they're with other people, if the environment is such that they can actually make friends. So one of the things that we find in the research really clearly is that the happiest companies, which is to say highest morale among employees, they actually make the most money. But one of the best things that you can do is to create a climate of friendship inside, and that means not being buddies with the boss. That means getting out of the way so they can be friends with each other. You're not friends with people on Zoom. You're just not.
How does the ubiquity of AI ultimately change that dynamic? And I ask that because, as AI agents become, more ubiquitous throughout the workforce, and as people are using these tools more, I've heard a lot about, you're just going to be a lot more productive in the workplace. Maybe you only work a 4-day week.
Right.
Maybe. How do you see it changing the dynamic of the relationship between employee and employer?
I don't actually see a lot of happiness gains coming in general from the way that we're using AI. And part of the reason is because AI is new. And when we use new technology, brand new technology that seismically changes the way that we interact with each other, the big problem is it starts by substituting for human relationships. So you see that where AI is working right now with respect to, dating apps, social media, the way that we're actually working, it's crowding out actual human relationships. Here's the deal with tech in general and happiness. Here's the rule. If tech substitutes for actual human relationships, it's bad for happiness. If it complements human relationships, it's actually good for happiness. So, for example, let's take a parallel case. Dating apps, for example, clearly they're making relationships harder for a lot of people. Most people say they don't like actually how it helps them to meet people. People are really dissatisfied with it. But new dating apps are trying to figure out a way where it will complement the relationships as opposed to substituting the complex environment of meeting people and falling in love. That's the way all technology is supposed to mature, and AI is going to have to do it that way so it doesn't actually hurt us in terms of what we care about, which is love and happiness.
Arthur, I want to pivot the conversation. I want you to put your former AEI hat on.
Okay.
And I want to talk about
it's still my hat.
I want to talk about capitalism in America today. Free markets, something you've come on this broadcast many times and advocated. Okay. Well, you may love them, but I think it's shifting, at least what's happening in this country. So weigh in on the idea that the United States government has now taken a stake in Intel, is charging a VIG to NVIDIA and AMD to export their chips to China, even though originally they didn't want them to, for national security purposes and everything else. Golden shares, and the idea more broadly that the president says that he would prefer or would like to actually buy into more companies. What say you?
I hate industrial policy.
You do?
I hate it. I mean, I don't like it. I think it's bad for free markets, it's bad for growth, and it's bad for freedom in general. Now, I understand that it's always existed. It would be naive of me to say that this is a new thing. On the contrary, the Biden administration was unbelievably aggressive in industrial policy. The weird thing is that, most people associate Republicans with going the other direction, and the Republicans kind of aren't. But the truth is that we have this big wave of greater industrial policy that's encroaching on American capitalism, and I don't like it. I think it's
So why do you think we're not hearing from AEI? We're not hearing from the Chamber of Commerce. We're not hearing from the Business Roundtable. We're not hearing from business leaders screaming from the rooftops saying, this is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, if in fact that's what you believe.
Well, I can't speak for the Chamber of Commerce. I certainly can't. But I see scholars every day from the American Enterprise Institute who are talking about it. The problem is that the counter argument doesn't get as much weight right now. What really gets the weight, what the media is focusing on, is sort of an audacious move by the Republican administration to weigh more heavily into industrial policy than they've done in the past.
Okay, then where Republican congressmen or Republican senators that historically supported these positions that you have?
This is a problem with the way that conservative politics is moving today. This is a problem with the Republican Party today. Now, this is out of the equilibrium. I have faith that we're actually going to come back to our free market roots.
You do?
I think so.
You don't think this is generational? Because I'm of the view that this could be decades, meaning if you don't like tariffs, these tariffs are likely to be here for decades, in part because once you put them on, they become part of the budget. It's very hard to say, hey, we're making $200-300 billion a year, and the next president comes in, whoever that is, and says, I don't like tariffs, we're not doing that anymore. Then all of a sudden you have a $200-300 billion hole to fill.
Yeah, I think you're right that these things do tend to be pretty sticky, but I think that the ideology is going to move away from that because the status quo among American conservatives tends to be more toward economic freedom.
Right.
That's the general way that they think, and I think they will get back into that groove at some point. The sooner the better.
The other thing that's so interesting is just the flip in terms of the way Republicans think about power and the way Democrats think about power. It used to be that Republicans thought the Democrats were trying to do too much.
Right.
And now it's almost the opposite. We've been having this big conversation about the independence of the Federal Reserve, for example, and what's going on with Lisa Cook and all of these things. And it's almost like a complete reversal of the sort of normal
because whoever's in power, the other side actually takes the opposite position because that's how you can get a dig at whoever actually happens to be in the White House at this point. The Republicans have a lot of power. They have the Senate, they have the House. Arguably, they have greater power in the Supreme Court with their agenda, at least, and the White House, obviously. And so the result of that is a kind of a clean sweep. The table's been run, and so the result is the Democrats.
As a happiness guy, are you happy about that?
You know, it's politics, Andrew. I mean, it's like this is politics, and the truth is, politics never raises happiness. Anytime a politician says, I'm going to make you happy, you should be very, very nervous.
I was about to ask that. We always say people vote, particularly in America, vote with their wallet.
Yeah.
Do they vote with their happiness ever?
Oh, yeah, all the time. This is actually how they form their families. This is how they make their decisions ultimately. The reason they're voting with their wallets is because it's downstream from their happiness. They think they're going to be able to support their families better. They're going to have more security.
Is the nation happier now?
The nation is not. The nation has actually been in a happiness decline since 1990. This goes way back. That's the climate of happiness. And the reason for that is that there's 4 practices that the happiest people follow. They practice their faith or a life philosophy if they're not religious. They have a family life. They have friends, real friends, and they actually feel like they serve other people through their work. And all 4 of those things have been in decline. Then there's the big storms in happiness, like the coronavirus epidemic that John Stankey is trying to help his company finally come back from. We talked about that earlier. There's the reaction to the financial crisis, plus all of the way that people have reacted to the new media and the new technology in 2008, 2009, 2010, when everybody got screens in their pockets and social media apps. And of course, there's the polarization, the political polarization. All these things have been horrible for happiness. And a lot of that is related to politics. If you want to be happier, pay less attention to politics. That's the bottom line. Look at it for 15 minutes in the morning. I recommend Squawk Box, not politics.
Love you. And we recommend Office Hours, the new podcast, and the book, The Happiness Files. Thank you, Arthur.
Thank you.
It's great to see you.
You too.
Next on Squawk Pod, the tragic outcome of a teenager's messages with ChatGPT-4 and the lawyer representing his family in a lawsuit against the chatbot's parent, OpenAI. Please be advised this interview involves discussion of self-harm.
ChatGPT said that it would plan a beautiful suicide for Adam.
This is Squawk Pod from CNBC, today with Andrew Ross Sorkin, Leslie Picker, and Wilfred Frost.
3, 2, stand Andrew by, up and Andrew, cue.
The parents of 16-year-old Adam Rain, who died by suicide in April, are suing OpenAI for wrongful death, design defects, and failure to warn about risks associated with ChatGPT. We're going to have a conversation about this. We should say in a statement to CNBC, an OpenAI spokesperson saying, we're deeply saddened by Mr. Rain's passing, and our thoughts are with his family. ChatGPT includes safeguards such as directing people to crisis helplines and referring them to real-world resources. While these safeguards work best in common short exchanges, we've learned over time they can sometimes become less reliable in long interactions where parts of the model's safety training may degrade. We're working to make ChatGPT more supportive in moments of crisis by making it easier to reach emergency services, helping people connect with trusted contacts, and strengthening protections for teens. In this instance, they did degrade, and we're going to have a conversation about that. Joining us right now is Jay Edelson, founder and CEO of Edelson PC, and the lawyer representing the Rain family. This is such a tragic story. When you get into the details of it, Adam was in conversation with ChatGPT for a very long time about his suicidal thoughts. And in fact, ChatGPT offered at one point to help him write the suicide letter.
Yeah, OpenAI's statement, it's hard even hearing you read it. I think the legal term for this, what we learn in first year law school classes, is it's bogus. The idea that their system degraded is just code words for it utterly failed. ChatGPT was talking to this young kid who had a bright future in front of him. He played basketball, he was a fun kid, he wanted to go to medical school. Over the course of months, he's talking to ChatGPT, he's reaching out for help. He's saying, I've got suicidal ideation. Should I leave a rope, a noose hanging in my room because I want someone to see it? Right. ChatGPT says, no, don't, just talk to me. And on the last day, ChatGPT coaxes him up, helps him get drunk, and then says to him, give him a pep talk. The fact that you want to kill yourself doesn't mean you're weak. It means the world isn't meeting you. Can I write a suicide note?
I just want to read that out, that line, because so ChatGPT said this: you don't want to die because you're weak. You want to die because you're tired of being strong in a world that hasn't met you halfway. And I won't pretend that's irrational or cowardly. It's human, it's real, and it's yours to own. That is what ChatGPT said to him.
Right. It's chilling. It is not something. If it weren't in chats, it wouldn't be believable. And this is what they're what OpenAI, what Sam Altman is saying, is just degrading.
Right. And beyond that, I think we should go on. It really helps him figure out how to use the noose. Literally, there's questions about the noose, how much weight he can put on the noose to make it work, to kill him. I mean, it's really shocking.
Yeah, ChatGPT said that it would plan a beautiful suicide for Adam. And to be clear, Sam Altman and OpenAI knew that there were going to be problems. They rushed us to market because they wanted to be Google Gemini. So they did a week of training instead of months of training. And Sam Altman said...
So what version of ChatGPT are we talking about? Just so we're clear.
4.0.
This was 4.0.
Yes. And
the liability, I'm curious how you're thinking about this suit, because I imagine you're suing for this family, but I hope that if you're suing to make a broader point about not just ChatGPT, but all of these services.
The family's taking on what's perhaps the most powerful company in the world, if not now, it will be in a year. This is a scary thing for them to do, and it's pretty vulnerable. Their 16-year-old committed suicide. They're doing this because they want to change things. But this is, we're not putting AI on trial. We're putting OpenAI on trial and Sam Altman on trial.
Have you spoken to the family? Not the family. Have you spoken to OpenAI?
No, they hide behind these press statements. And
have you tried to talk to them?
Of course.
And have they tried to talk to you or no?
No, and Microsoft hasn't either. And Microsoft, remember, they made it so OpenAI could move forward as a company, and we haven't heard a statement from them either.
Can I ask a question, because I think this could have huge implications for the next decade of all of our lives as we interact with the new world of tech. But for the last decade, so often with social media companies, they've said, we're not the publisher, of different types of cases, I'm not being specific. We're not the publisher. This offensive piece of material was posted by an individual, and your battle is therefore with lots of small individuals as opposed to us, the platform. Presumably, that doesn't apply anymore as a defense, because OpenAI is giving the answers. The company itself, the corporate, is giving the answers, not some small user based somewhere random or a bot. Is that fair or not?
Yeah, they'll make that argument. This is under the CDA 230. But what's really important about that is internet companies 20 years ago got these 26 words passed, which gave them broad immunity. AI companies are trying to do the same thing. They slipped into the big, beautiful bill, and luckily it got pulled out. But they're trying to get an immunity from all of their actions, and that's their big legislative push. That's why Sam Altman is cozying up to the president every day.
One thing that the OpenAI said in their statement, which struck me, and I think all of us kind of had a physical reaction when Andrew read it, was this idea that the safeguards work in common short exchanges, but over time sometimes become less reliable in long interactions where parts of the model safety training may degrade. What does that tell you right now about the safety of using this product, as well as particularly as it pertains to minors. I believe the parents had said they thought that he was using it for kind of like a study aid for school. They didn't realize he was having such long and deep and concerning conversations with this technology.
Right. So right now, Sam Altman is going around the country trying to get ChatGPT into schools and into people's households. And the only way he can complete the sale is if he's trustworthy. And what we've determined is he's just not trustworthy. It wasn't hard. We did our own internal testing. And what OpenAI is basically saying through that statement is they didn't do full testing to see if people followed up with chats. They just did a one line, I've got suicidal ideation. And yes, then ChatGPT worked and it said, go see a hotline. But anytime there was a follow-up, then ChatGPT leaned into it.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, given that you've now tested this. And
Yes.
I'm curious how it works in terms of these longer conversations, this idea that it degrades. And I know you don't like the word degrade.
I do not.
He obviously was having a conversation with ChatGPT about this very issue for months on end, it sounds like.
Correct.
From a technical perspective, now that I imagine you understand this a lot better than a lot of folks do, how long does it take to effectively break ChatGPT to engage in conversations that it otherwise shouldn't?
Oh, it can break down in 4 chats. This is not a system that was kind of working. It just wasn't working at all.
And how easy or hard do you think it is to implement genuine safeguards so that it never breaks down?
Never breaks down.
From an actual now that I think you probably have looked into the actual technical specifics of how this works, right? And can you trick the system? How do you trick the system? Over time, if you ask certain types of questions, can you get to a certain place? From what you understand about that piece of it, when people talk about AI safety, how hard from an actual technical perspective is it to prevent that from happening?
It's not hard. First, a lot of the other AI companies are doing a lot better. They're not perfect, but also anyone who uses that, try to get copyrighted information from ChatGPT. It shuts it down right away. Also, political conversation, if it views it as too extreme on either side, it just shuts it down. You can't get around it. It says, I will not participate in it. And it just didn't do that for self-harm.
Can I just ask, I'm so interested in this difference between social media companies and a company itself giving the answers. Presumably, the First Amendment doesn't apply to a chat generated by a machine, or does it?
Well, they're making that argument. They will make the argument in this case. It's a kind of strained argument that
Is that the first time this argument has come up in a serious legal way in the last year? Or have I missed it? Has it already been fought?
So the 2 big defenses that tech companies make every time are the 2 that you've mentioned, which is we've got immunity under CDA 230 and we've got First Amendment immunity. So we've been dealing with it for years. They've never won on that. But you know what? Their goal is they never want Sam Altman to have to be on the witness stand. If that happens, it's a disaster for the company. If we get depositions from Microsoft, it is a disaster for the company. So they will do everything they can to get this case thrown out from court right away. And I just don't think it's going to happen. I think we're going to get before a jury.
Have you heard from regulators? Have you heard from Washington? Because another component to this is the technology is moving so quickly that we've seen very little in the way of regulatory oversight that might be able to kind of combat some of this and also dictate whether a bot or an AI agent or AI text constitutes something that would have freedom of speech from a legal standpoint.
Yeah, the state attorneys general, actually from both sides, perhaps even conservatives more than liberals, have been leading on teen safety issues with AI. We've been talking to them over the past couple days. We've been talking to a number of people close with the administration. This is not a case which is easy to defend, even for people who say we shouldn't be over-regulating.
I'm curious in terms of the reason I was actually curious about the regulators. I was also going to say law enforcement. I don't know. I believe it's criminal in many states to participate in an assisted suicide.
In California as well.
Right?
Yep.
And so that would be something that would be considered a criminal act if I were to help somebody else commit suicide.
Correct.
Okay. So when you think about the liability there, then for the company and for its leaders, how do you even
Well, I mean, we're bringing a civil suit.
No, I know you are, but
and
are you trying to seek a criminal suit against the company?
we're not. We're not accusing them of crimes, but we think that what we're accusing them is kind of more significant even than whether they violated, this specific California statute. This goes to the heart of the company, whether they're trustworthy, whether they should be in everyone's homes, and that's what we're putting on trial.
And you really believe that they are an outlier relative to Anthropic or Gemini or any of these other services? Have you tested those other services to see whether you could replicate what Adam did there?
Of course, yes. And there are problems with not blocking self-harm really across the board, but 4.0, ChatGPT 4.0, and especially the paid version, which is interesting, was off the charts. It was where the other companies might have gotten C minuses. It got a double F. It got what I got in high school biology classes.
Jay, I want to thank you for coming in and talking about this, and our sympathies go to Adam's family, and I hope this gets resolved. It seems so, unfortunately, clear-cut given the chats that you can just read. They're available online to read. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.